And if you would, because I want to see if a few more is going to come on before I go into the little activity that I want to do today. So if you would talk with them about their requirements for you and kind of where they are with you.
Okay, well, I am pleased to share with you that 3 of you, Lanika, I think it's pronounced Ticey, and Ashley have all finished their competency folio successfully for me and their clinical internship log. So they are ready to upload those into their DRF folio. And I give you the go-ahead when I do that. I will tell you, send an email both to you and Dr. Stedman and tell you you're ready to upload those for final evaluation. And now don't forget that everything is due in Taskstream for your SIAP by next Monday, the 19th. And we would like for you also to have completed your competency folio and your internship logs and the School of Ed dispositions, the School of Ed dispositions you've done every semester, and then the competency analysis. That's again a self-assessment, and it's a self-rating scale, and it's met or not met. And so by now you've met them all. Hopefully that's what you'll score, how you'll score yourself. And you don't have to upload any artifacts or any explanation to that. So I've gotten a lot of questions on those. You can go ahead and do that School of Ed dispositions and your competency analysis. Those are pretty quick things. I like to call them low-hanging fruit. You can knock that out sometime when you're not feeling too energized to do any deep work and get that done. And we'll look over that. But the competency folio, allow yourself plenty of time to do that. It takes me a long time to review them. I'll just be honest with you. And so I'm concerned that you may meet the deadline, but then I'm not going to be able to respond and review it all within the deadline. So back yourself up and give us a couple days leeway on that.
And remember, you have to do all 21 competencies. You're reflecting on all 21. So just remember that. Okay, India, can you hear me? And Hope, can you hear me? And Maisha, I need to just remind you, there was, I sent an email out just a little bit ago. Make sure that you, when we get through tonight, get Dr. Stone the information that he needs to put your presentation, the presentation he's working on together. So make sure that you try to get that to him before you stop tonight. Okay. Hope, you heard me, Hope? I see Maisha. Did you get that, Hope?
Yes.
Okay, and India, did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thanks, India.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I've covered that. I told him I would make sure that I talked with everybody on that. Just to let you know, I am, for the most part, I am very, very pleased with how you have paced yourselves and how you have you're more than where I thought some of you would be at this point with getting the SIAP finished. And I've been pleased with the work. The task 3 was a little bit of a challenge, but a send back on that. Most of you were able to correct the issues with that, and it was, a quick turnaround. I've been, for the most part, I've been very pleased with task 4 and task 5. You followed the directions very well. The things that you've had to go back and revisit, it's been, for the most part, it's been minor stuff. I will remind you, as you're putting all of it together at the end, just remember that it must be evident that you have that you've presented to your administration. So make sure that that there won't be a problem when your evaluator gets in there that you've done what you need to do. Michelle and Ashley, it feels good to be where you are, doesn't it? To know that you've got all this behind you, this part behind you completely. Sarah is submitting today. Penny is submitting today. I've got some others that are right at the verge of submitting. So I'm feeling good about the Thursday deadline at 9 o'clock. So just remember that gives me time to look at things, and if there are issues, it gives you time to go back and to fix it before I let you submit it to turn it in, and then to Taskstream. Before I go any further, are there any questions about any final requirements for the SIAP at this time? Any questions? Remember that I'm available. Dr. Revis is available. But like I said, I think that for the most part, you're where you need to be. And if not, then I've talked with you individually, and you know what you've got to do to be able to finish out. So you make sure that you follow through with the things that we talked about there. What I want to do for the time that we're going to spend together today, and it may not be the whole time, it may be the whole time, I don't know. I want us to talk about the assignment that you just completed, and that's the strengths-based assignment, reading, and the activities that you had to do. And I want to put you on the spot a little bit. So so don't, I know who's with me, so don't you go out on me, because I'll know that you're leaving me because I'm going to ask you to do something. But you don't know which one it is. And next week, you should have the information that I sent out. Next Monday is Dr. Lamb's meeting with you on good interviewing techniques. And Dr. Lamb has been professionally trained by Gallup to he has a rich background in it, and he's going to share with you some just good stuff that will help you as you're moving forward. And even if you are in an administrative position now, as you are moving into new areas of administration and eventually central office work, you know, these types of interviews, there's going to be different types of interviews out there, and he's going to talk about those kinds of interviews and traps that are set, you know, things to look at. So, you know, it'll be time well spent. And then next Tuesday, Dr. Revis and I are coming back online. But what we're going to do next Tuesday is going to be to just come online like we've done before, and just be there if you need to ask us questions, because we're going to give you that time to work with your groups to get this final assignment done that's due week 11 that Dr. Revis will talk about when I get through. We'll come back to that, but we're going to give you that time. But we're going to be available during that time for you to just, you know, to zoom in and zoom out. You know, you may have a question, but you don't have to wait until then. But we are going to come online for a little bit on Tuesday, and then our culminating class will be on week 11, and we begin class at 6 o'clock that evening instead of 7, simply because every group will be presenting. So and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end. But what I want to do now, the activities that you were engaged in this week with the Strengths Finder book, the scenarios that you had to respond to, all 9 of those could easily, very easily be used, could be turned into an interview question very easily. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to play round robin, and I'm going to call your name, and I'm going to say one, and I just want you in just in a minute, 2 minutes, I want you to respond to it based on what you've already done. And, you may think of something that you think, but I want you to pretend that, that this is maybe an interview session and that you're talking to a prospective principal for an assistant principalship or superintendent for a principalship job. How would you respond to that? And I'm going to begin number one. Maisha, you're number one on the list. So if you unmute yourself, I'm going to ask you to respond to number one. Number one said, discuss the differences between a leader and a manager. And it says cite valid research, but you don't have to do that. I want you to talk about, you've got 1 minute, one to 2 minutes to talk about what is the difference between a leader and a manager? What have you learned in this program?
So I learned that a leader is someone who has followers, and that they also like encourage their followers to strive for the best and strengthen them. And a manager kind of like oversees their they don't have followers, they have like workers. They kind of like oversee and they manage and they affiliate what the job, whereas the leader kind of like they kind of like encourage, and the manager manages.
Okay, great, very good. Lamika, you pick up where she left off. What do you want to say that she hasn't said?
Sorry, I was stuffing my mouth.
That's all right. I caught you with your mouth. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I would say that one of the things that's a difference about a leader and a manager is the span in which the span of effect that they have on those people. So a leader, for an example, is usually someone who your job is to spark something in someone to see what they bring to the table. And then hopefully they can take whatever that is that you've sparked in them, and they can move forward with whatever and they're empowered to do it on their own. Whereas with a manager situation, you may be giving them the specifics of the task just to meet one intended goal. A leader's view is going to be a little more visionary, in my opinion.
Very, very good. Latasha, can you think of anything else that they would not have said?
No, I think they did a good job.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody want to respond before we move on? Okay.
Dr. Stedman, may I put my 2 cents in?
Yes, sure. Yes, you may.
Guys, I think leadership goes back to John Maxwell, and he says
He's
it
one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's very succinct in his definition of leadership. A leader is someone who influences others to do things they wouldn't ordinarily do on their own, and to go places they would not ordinarily go on their own. Now, he has a lot of other things to say about it, but to me, that's what leadership is all about: influencing others to do things they just wouldn't ordinarily do on their own. So it's about having that vision and bringing out the best in people.
And you know what? If a leader has followers, and if you don't have followers, you're just on a journey right by yourself. So just remember that. Okay, India, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, India. Just respond to this. Tell me what you think about it. If you spend your life trying to be good at everything, you will never be great at anything.
Well, I think that means that if you don't take time to focus on one thing to try to do it to the best of your ability, if you're all over the place trying to be, know your job, know what your job is. Don't try to be a counselor and an administrator and a teacher, just trying to dip and dab in all of those things. I just feel like if you focus on what your job is and what you're supposed to do, then you'll do that well. But if you kind of like all over the place trying to dip and dab and everything, you're gonna come up short somewhere.
I agree. Very good. Sarah, can you respond more to that? What do you think?
Yeah, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes,
I'm on my daughter's iPad. I'm not used to doing it on this thing.
that's okay.
I agree with what she said. However, I kind of think it's good to try to figure out what you are great in. So I think to be able to identify what you're great in, you kind of have to try a little bit of some things that you're interested in order to find that. And then once you find kind of what those characteristics are that you succeed in, you kind of follow them with that angle.
Okay. And I like what both of you said, but Sarah, I like that because that ties in to the whole purpose of taking this assessment. So just hold that thought. Okay, hold that thought. We're going to come back to it at the end. Let's go to number 3. Number 3, Tamika. Tamika, not, Tamika, yeah, Tamika's there. Tamika, while he has spent much of his career in a leadership role, the vast majority of a boss's efforts have been focused on trying to mimic traits of leaders he has known or read about. Tell me just off the top of your head, what do you think when you hear that?
Well, I think if you spend majority of the time trying to mimic others, you haven't had the or given yourself the opportunity to focus on your own strengths and weaknesses, and you've kind of overlooked that because your focus is on what someone else has accomplished or trying to accomplish, and you're not meeting the time of the organization that you're in, the time that you're in, the position. It's not authentic because you're so focused on just kind of like being a pattern instead of really being true to the area that you're in for the time. And as it relates to like administration, if you're at a particular school, every principal is going to be different. Their style will be different. So it would call for a different style of admin work, not trying to be like the principal across town or even the principal before you, because the times are different, the students, the community, everything. So it needs to be more tailored to the time and the era that you're in then.
Okay, excellent. Felicia, you respond to the same prompt.
Okay, well, you got me right at a very good hand because I just got through having this discussion with the bishop, with the youth ministry before coming on. And before I met with the Zoom team. Being in the role of the leaders, as I was sharing earlier, and as I'm leading an organization, it has been embraced to me about what a previous leader had and how they had run the organization before me. But it's going to be hard for me to try to fill that person's shoes because, for one, we both going to have different visions and different viewpoints. And therefore, for me to be able to move that vision, then therefore, I'm going to have to employ different types of strategies as well as empowering people and also building that trust in them to trust me to help lead them to where we need to get to to fulfill that vision, that mission that we are set out to do. I remember in the past, I always wanted to do what that person do. And some people, their skills and your skills and talents are very indifferent. And therefore I have to look at the uniqueness of me. What types of craft I'm able to bring, and my craft is going to be different. So therefore it's going to be hard to fulfill that other leader because their vision and their aspiration and their perspective, what mission they're trying to accomplish is going to be indifferent. So I have to bring an originality.
Okay, very good. Very good. Dr. Revis, anything you want to say at this point?
I think those are very insightful answers. And guys, I think I think taking this a self-assessment really helps you hone in on where your strengths are and where your areas of growth may be. And when you get into that principalship role, maybe not as an assistant principal, but as a principal, you want to surround yourself. You want to hire people who are strong in the areas where you may not be. But you got to know yourself. Not only know yourself, but I'm going to tell a little background. When I first started teaching, I coached basketball and women's volleyball. So just like an old coach, you look at every one of your teachers and you find their strengths and you build upon their strengths, just like you do your students. You find their strengths, build upon them. It's not saying that you don't ever want them to grow in those areas for improvement, but you got to start out in recognizing their strengths and putting them in places where they're going to excel. Then you can start working on those other areas. So very good answers. Know yourself.
Exactly. Listen, Diane, number 4, without an awareness of your strengths, it's almost impossible for you to lead effectively.
So it definitely draws back on what we just talked about. And I love what Felicia said, where she pulled in several leadership roles. So she pulled in, being a youth director and a leader in that role. So really knowing your strength, and like Dr. Revis just said, knowing your weaknesses and being able to address those weaknesses with your staff and your vision, and that you're going to lead everyone together. I think a unified vision is probably the most important thing that I have learned, and that many people and many leaders, especially one leader that I've been working with, doesn't share and communicate her vision. And I was never really aware of her strengths and her weaknesses. So it was always very difficult to, as a school, for us to meet our goals. And we continue to struggle with that because that leadership role is just not presented.
Okay, great response. Anybody, would you like to say anything else about what Diane has just talked about? Anybody?
I was going to add that leaders lead in different ways based on their natural talents and strengths. And sometimes nothing is more obvious when a leader is out of their element or comfort zone. So your followers are going to be hesitant to support your initiatives or take your leadership serious if you don't walk with purpose or lead with purpose of a common goal to the group. So as a leader, it's really important that you gain trust and have a strong level of awareness of your natural abilities to lead. So knowing that those will bring the most productive version of yourself and understand your why, and then you're going to be able to have the outcomes that you want with your leadership style.
Yeah, great responses, both of you, great responses. Ashley, number 5. All too often, leaders are blind to the obvious when it comes to something of critical importance to them, their own personality. Many political and business leaders have self-concepts that are miles away from reality. They simply don't know their own strengths and weaknesses. How would you respond to that?
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear anything you said.
Okay.
I am at the beach and I have horrible reception.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah, I
can. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Respond to this. It's number 5. All too often, leaders are blind to the obvious when it comes to something of critical importance to them, their own personality. Many political and business leaders have self-concepts that are miles away from reality. They simply don't know their own strengths and weaknesses. How would you respond to that, Ashley?
So my response would be that sometimes you're just too close to an issue. And so you aren't able to really reflect because you are fully immersed in whatever the situation is. So you have to take a moment to step back and step away in order to be able to gain some feedback from people that are closest to you, people that will give you that critical information. So just as you are able to take your own inventories of your coworkers. You want to be able to take self inventories of yourself, use different type of feedback mechanisms so that those who are around you can give you feedback as well.
Excellent, excellent response.
That's hard to hear sometimes, though.
Yes, it is. It is. Somebody else, anybody else?
I ain't say it was
respond to that?
easy, but yes, yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, yes.
I think it's important to know your audience as well, because
Amen.
I always think about this example of, if I was, say, an animal rights activist and I was chosen to speak at a PETA rally, and it's 10 degrees below at this PETA rally, and I go in with a fur coat on, I've lost my audience before I've even said anything, because I walk in with a fur coat on. So it's just important to make sure that you're very aware of whom you're speaking to, and that you're talking to them in a way that they can relate as well.
Very well said. Great. Hope. Let's look at number 6. A leader needs to know his strengths as a carpenter knows his tools, or as a physician knows the instruments at his or her disposal. What great leaders have in common is that each truly knows his or her strengths and can call on the right strength at the right time. This explains why there is no definitive list of characteristics that describes all leaders. How would you respond to that, Hope? Okay, can't hear you. Can't hear you, Hope.
I would have to know knowing who you
go ahead.
are. And can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. That you would have to know yourself and know your strengths and know where you are, your specific areas of where you can go and show and teach and lead other people within those strengths. And at the same time, knowing your own strengths, you are able to pinpoint and identify strengths in other people. So this way you can make a cohesive group to work a common goal.
Okay, excellent response. Anybody want to respond further to that one?
I would.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand, and going back to what the strength finder was saying, is it's not just a process of a leader being good enough. We can try and say that we have, quote unquote, mastered all of these skills, but the biggest skill that we need to understand is that there's always going to be someone who knows more about a subject than you do. And working in my internship, I've heard that from principals. I've heard that from people downtown. They always surround yourself with someone who you believe is smarter than you are. Because I feel like even though we are in an administrative leadership role, we have to understand that we can't stop learning, whether it be about ourselves, whether it be about our colleagues, whether it be about our students. As long as we're continuously learning and reflecting individually with our team, with our school, then we're going to be successful in what our shared purpose is.
That excellently said. And I will tell you this, and Dr. Revis can probably attest to this. And I may have told you this, when I became a high school principal, I went into a situation where the school was low performing. And I did not have a high school background to begin with. So, I mean, I was dealing with a lot of novelties and going into a very desolate situation. But that is what I did, Kylie. I immediately began to surround myself with competent people in areas that I did not feel I knew were not my strengths. And I let them, I knew that there were things that I was good at. And one of the things I was very good at was identifying those people that were better than me in some of the areas. So, you have to know that, know thyself. And that's how I built my team. I built a success team by finding people that were much smarter than I was in many areas. And then you've heard this as cliche before, it was not a me thing. It was our high school, it was not my high school. And everything that we did became our challenge, our situation, our problem. I never took, although the buck stopped at my desk, I never took the responsibility for thinking that I had to conquer this all by myself. And I told you this, we were about 19% proficiency when I came there. And when I left 6 years later, we were at 62% proficient. And it was because of surrounding myself with the people that was going to help me get from point A to point B. And there was a lot of work in between there, a lot. But you're exactly right. Very well said. Let's look at
Dr. Stedman.
Yes, go ahead.
I got a question about this situation you just talked about from the 19 to 62%. As the principal, did you find that in order to make that happen, that there were a lot of people that had to, as the individuals in the building, the staff members, you had a turnover where people had to really remove themselves because maybe they didn't fit the direction that the school was moving in? Or was it more so that people kind of just took to your vision and what you wanted? Or was it a combination?
It was a combination. I had to, and I'm just going to be honest with you, Lanika. The school had been a dumping ground for, if they didn't know what else to do with people in the county, they ended up at that high school. And so it was so unfair to the community and to the students because the students were not, there was so much incompetency there and what I had to do, I had to bite the bull by the horn, and I had to deal with incompetence. And either I put a lot of people on action plans, and either you had to shape up or you had to ship out. And, I had to have some very, very hard conversations with people. Some people rose to the occasion, and some people grew professionally, and they were very successful. But some people, I had to help find their way out. And you will find yourself as administrators having to do that sometimes. That's one of the hard jobs of being an administrator, is if they don't belong on your bus, then you've got to get them off your bus. If they're not going to, if they're not going to be a part of the team and they're not going to be a team player, you can't allow them to hold you hostage. And the thing is, you've got people that have grown up in those communities sometime that they think that they, that God put them there and that nobody can't move them. So you've got to deal with all of the society factors of the social factors of all of this as well. But no, it was a combination of a lot. And one of the things, although it was a rough year, the second year I was there, the state ended up putting a state assistance team there. And there were times that I would have as many as 25 extra people on my campus each day. And while it was a pain in the you-know-what, it helped in a lot of ways because it helped me. They were able to help me fight some of the battles that I didn't have to fight by myself. So I took advantage of the fact that they could help me fight some of those battles. So, but no, it was a struggle to get from point A to point B, a lot. Okay.
And Lanika, I would just like to add to that. When you take over a school, you inherit the staff. And so you have to work. First of all, I think you always have to approach people with, from the perspective of, you want to help them grow.
Right.
And you want to give them the support that they need to grow professionally. I personally believe that most people want to do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody really comes to work every day and say, oh, I just want to be terrible today. I really think people want to do well. And sometimes when they put up roadblocks, it's not because they're really trying to fight you and to keep the status quo. It's because they're very afraid. They don't have the skills. They don't have the knowledge to teach any differently. So I always believe you have to support your teachers, but there comes a time that you have to have those candid conversations if you don't see the growth and improvement. And, you have to determine between them being unable to do it and just being unwilling. And I always think it comes down usually to them not being able to do the job.
Right.
But it's a process, and I think you have to work with people.
It is. It is. Number 7, Penny. While solving difficult problems is an essential part of effective leadership, identifying opportunities for the future plays a much more important role in creating hope and optimism. That's a lot of words, but what do they mean? What do they mean to you?
So to me, I think that you really need to have some both short-term and long-term goals, because when you've got a difficult problem, you're going to go for the immediate solution. You're trying to get that problem solved as quickly as possible. A lot of people want to do it super quick to try to keep others from knowing that there is a problem. So while you're solving that problem and you're trying to do that, you've got to have some goals in place, long-term, short-term goals. You've got to have those goals in place, because without those goals, you're not going to be able to create hope or optimism in your followers, the people that you are working with, the people that are helping you. You've got to be able to create that hope and optimism. So, sometimes you have to sit down at the table, and I can give the example from the book, Phil Cordell. He wanted to create hope and optimism for his team, and he went about it in a totally, no, not him, Anderson from Best Buy, went about it in a totally different way. When, he was like, hey, when people come in our store, we're not going to rush up on them. We're not just in this business to make a commission. We're in this business to build our customer base. And while they didn't understand it, ultimately, he kept his company going when everyone else wasn't doing as well. So you've got to have some goals. You've got to know what the end result is going to be.
And it goes back to when we were talking about when I took over the high school. I realized I had it was not only a difficult situation. Initially, it looked impossible. I mean, it really did. I really wanted to run the other way. I'm being honest with you. But I realized that there were some things I had to deal with immediately. Those are my short-term goals. I had no choice. There was some that I knew that I would have to spend a little bit of time, do some observing, analyze things, but I knew that it wouldn't be long down the road that I could do those. But I knew that to move from 19% proficient to 62% proficiency, it was going to take me some time. So, I had to begin putting some long-term strategies into place, or we as a team had to make that happen. And so you're exactly right. That, and the problem could be anything, it just happened. Mine was the whole school, from students to staff to community. It was everything that you've done over the past year and a half, every action plan that you've done. I was way back then. That was back in 1998. I was there from 1998 to 2004. I was there for 6 years. So back then, everything that you've been doing, I was doing it then, but didn't realize it. I just, I did it because I had no choice but to do it. But all of it was unfolding right before me. So everything that you've done, I have lived it. Dr. Revis, we've lived these kinds of situations. So, and
we haven't, and I like.
You'll have to live some of them too. based on where you go. You know, you might be in a pretty good situation now, but chances are when you become a principal, you will end up in a situation that it's not going to be always easy. Diane, you've shared some things with me. You know some of the things that you're facing in your situation. You know, all of you have shared some things with me over. You can think about your own schools right now, and probably you can visualize the things that if you were principal that you would hope that you could make change. Dr. Revis, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to what Penny said about having those short-term goals. I think that nothing motivates the staff anymore than to get some quick wins. If they can see something turn around pretty quickly, they feel motivated, they feel empowered, they have this sense of self-efficacy. Because many times when you are working in a low-performing school, teachers have, you know, this low sense of self-efficacy that, you know, they can't do students. It's all the students' fault. It's all the parents' fault, that they don't have that power to make a difference. And, you know, many times we've got to look for those quick wins. So we're building confidence and boosting morale and boosting that motivation. And what you're doing is you're building their sense of self-efficacy.
You are.
So good point, Penny.
Yeah, great. And remember, celebrate the small wins. The small things are worth celebrating. And if you start out celebrating the small things, they will work so much harder to help you, you know, with the things that are going to be harder. But you find some, like Dr. Revis said, you find some things that you can fix pretty quickly. Because if you start out with the hardest stuff, then, you know, you're kind of digging your hole a little bit deeper, and it's hard to get out. So, you know, find those things that you can win up front and celebrate them. Find opportunities to celebrate.
Dr. Stedman, I was gonna say the same thing. I had celebrate each milestone, because as you celebrate the milestones with your organization, they're more likely to take more risk.
You're exactly right.
The same thing.
Okay. Thank you for
Dr. Stedman. I also wanted to add that, you know, sometimes you have got to, while we know things may not be good and you're trying to build that hope and that optimism, sometimes you've got to look at some of the positive things, what you have done. You know, my school situation, you've read my papers, you know, my school is a Title I school. You know, my school is we had a SIG grant that just ended, and you know that our school is considered a recurring low performing school. Recurring, when I say recurring, I mean since 2014 our scores have dropped. And when you have someone that's constantly saying you need to do this, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this right, hope and optimism is gone.
Amen.
You have to focus on, hey, y'all, guess what? We had 2 kids today that passed their test. To celebrate those small victories, because otherwise hope and optimism will be very difficult to get back.
Yeah, very well said. I couldn't say that any better. And you're exactly right. And you're right. I feel like I know some of your schools very, very well. Let's look at number 8. And let me see, who have I got for number 8? Michelle. Leaders stay true to who they are and then make sure they have the right people around them.
So to me, strong leadership teams are built of individuals with their own unique strengths, which makes the most cohesive and effective team. Team members possess broader groupings of strengths in multiple domains. So individuals do not need to be as well-rounded because all of the team members will make it successful by their characteristics. And a leader needs to build trust and strong relationships, maximizing efficiency so the organization can thrive. They need to stay true to the mission, the vision, and master the goals that are set. So high-performing teams focus on results. And when a conflict is presented and every member may not agree, they have a healthy debate, which builds strength and develop cohesiveness because they keep that end goal in mind and the mission and vision. So an emphasis on prioritizing what is best for the organization leads to a strong team, and keeping that at the forefront of all of the decisions for the organization, including diversity, brings perspective. That was one thing that I really liked in the book on how it talked about that your team shouldn't be all the same you. Having diversity in there brings experiences, situations, and solutions that will get people to follow. So leaders see the impact of their efforts on the world that lies ahead, and they have long-term goals to continue to success.
Exactly. Very well said. Anybody want to add anything to what Michelle has just said? Okay, let's move on to number 9. We're going to run out of time in just a few minutes. And number 9, Kylie. The most effective leaders also get people to follow, and we've alluded to some of this, but how would you conclude with this?
I think it comes back to having a shared purpose. The biggest thing that I have observed with my administration and with the culture of my community and my school is that we know what our purpose is. We're not necessarily driven by who is the top dog. We're driven by how can we all work together as a team to achieve this shared purpose and to help facilitate this community. I think, again, it comes back to having the right members of a team surround you and support you. And, leaders don't simply, ask people to follow. They demonstrate these skills and qualities that we've talked about, and then people naturally want to gravitate towards them. They're constantly looking to move forward. They're constantly looking to progress, to change, to innovate. So in a way, leaders are presenting the possibilities, and they're giving their team and their followers a chance to join that shared purpose.
Okay, excellent. All of you have done an excellent job responding. Dr. Revis, would you like to make a final comment on what they have said?
Well, it's very obvious to me with your responses that you've learned a lot about leadership. And guys, every leader you have, whether it's a principal, assistant principal, former and future, you can always learn from them. You can learn what not to do as well as learn what to do. And think about the reasons why they're doing certain things. Ask questions. You're going to be embarking on your school leadership here soon. So, I feel very, very confident that you're going to begin your leadership career with a strong foundation. So, my hat's off to you.
Exactly. And I'm going to go round robin, and you've got about a minute, and that'll give us enough time. And then Dr. Revis say what she needs to say about the week 11 assignment. Let's go back with Latasha. Latasha, let's just talk just a minute. Talk about the assessment and what you found out about yourself from that assessment. And all of you be prepared to do the same thing.
After the assessment, I guess I mentioned to my group that it hit me right on. It said that I was a relationship builder. I'm really big on relationships. I like to be consistent. Once I get in a routine, I like to stick to that routine unless I find something better. So being consistent. What else did it say I was?
What did you learn in that you felt like you needed? You said, well, I know this is a strength, but you identified that it's an area that you needed to work on. What do you feel like you need to work on most as you're moving into administration?
Out of the other areas you're speaking
Yeah, were you able to,
in my
can you remember,
strengths?
can you remember any of it? Well,
I
let's,
guess,
let's put it this way. Let's just say that you know what your 5 strengths are. You prioritize them. You know that there are many others out there. Those are the areas that you need to focus, all of you. You need to look at those and say, while they're not necessarily weaknesses, you know that they're not in that top 5. So you know that and some of those areas, that may be the areas that you say, I don't know that I'll ever be good in that. So you find people that are good in those areas. And again, it goes back to you surround yourself with competent people in the areas that that are not your 5 top strengths, so that you've got a good foundation, because all of those characteristics are very, very important to a firm and a strong administration. So you just remember that. Okay, Penny, what did you learn from this experience about yourself? Okay, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I got it. Like Tasha said, it pretty much hit me. It got me just exactly like I was. It did analyze some of the things a little deeper than what I expected. I was expecting it to really scream out, you're OCD, because I know I'm OCD, but it didn't. But it did recognize my need for order and my need for things to, stay the same. It picked up my need to build relationships instead of have many people around me, and how I like to take on more than I should at times. And I was surprised it caught that. I do. It was right. It was pretty much spot on, like Tasha said. So, it was interesting to see that you take an assessment and it knows you exactly. It picks out all those little quirky things about you.
Okay, well, good. Thank you. Felicia.
Well, one of the 5 strengths, Dr. Stedman in our class, what really got with me with discipline. I'm thinking what Penny said, because with the discipline, like being organized and structured, but what hit me when it said that my colleagues can resent me for that well-disciplined and structure. And I don't want to be resented by anyone, especially as I'm leading my EC department. It's just, I just have these this attribute, just this thing about just having things in place. So they just gave me a mindset, as school is approaching. How can I kind of water down or pour back on how well defined I do, for as my skill as being, disciplined, because I don't want to deter anyone where I'm trying to bring the team and keeping us in compliance, and meeting fidelity. Mm-hmm. And so therefore I had no idea. I just thought, hey, I got my stuff together. I'm trying to stay on top of everything to make sure, everything is in place. And all of the EC staff is in place. They are knowledgeable about what the district and, the federal mandates that we have to make sure that we have in place for these students. So it just gave me something to think about. The other areas, like everyone else, it was an aha moment, like, aha, that's me, especially one of the areas of beliefs. I put family first, and with the spiritual, because of my background working in a ministry. So I really saw that this assessment knew me a little more than I knew myself. But that area of that discipline, I guess I could be too disciplined. And so therefore, I kind of tweeted a little bit, Felicia. So that's where I want to go back and revamp.
And again, I like that, because you learned something about yourself that you need to work on. So that's great. Yes, Sarah. Can't hear you.
Well, one of the things that surprised me about mine, one of the top ones it gave me was adaptability, which I guess is kind of good, except I have humongous anxiety with change, or when I have to quickly adapt to things. So I was quite surprised that that would have been my top strength, because I guess maybe I can tend to do it, but I don't really like it.
Right.
The rest were kind of on point, I suppose, but
Okay.
that was my big surprise.
Yeah, good. Diane.
My big surprise was that I do crave input and that I'm always thirsty for knowledge. And I love that in there. Kylie and I talked about that. I don't make small talk, and I'm gonna have to really work on making small talk and being relationship focused, because I'm very task orientated, and like Felicia said, being in the EC, you're just like, there's so much to cover. I've had people tell me that I am intimidating because I'm a workaholic and I'm very disciplined and very driven. So I'm going to have to really work on my people skills.
Okay, but you're learning something, and what you said is point on, because it's important. Okay, Sarah, unmute yourself.
Okay.
And put your daughter up there. What's her name?
This is Lila.
Hey, Lila. How are
Hi.
you? Okay, but that's okay. I'm using that as an example. It's important to take, and for people to build relationship, to spend time knowing about them and their families. You know, taking that 1 minute to do that, and remembering that Sarah has a daughter named Lila, you know.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to use this like Ashley. Ashley has been dealing with a sick dad, and he had open heart surgery. So, you know, saying, Ashley, how is your dad? India has just come back from having to be on the road taking care of a sick dad up north, saying, you know, India, we pray that things are better. Building those, taking the time to stop in the hall and say, you know, by the way, you know, and just spending and doing that. So those are so important. Dr. Revis, before I move on to Michelle, would you like to comment on that?
I agree with you. Just think about all you know about building relationships with your students and how important that is for you to build a relationship with them. I believe it's just as important when you're an administrator to build those same relationships with your staff.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a lot of leaders want to intentionally cause a divide between themselves and their staff. I never did that. I wanted to know my staff and them to know me, and you know, making that small talk, asking about the family. That's so important. That will build a lot of trust and a lot of loyalty, and it goes a long way.
Exactly. Thank you. Michelle.
I found the Strength Finder very interesting because it's something I was not familiar with. So after reading the directions, you had a certain time limit. So you had to read and make a choice and go with your first instincts. But I do believe that overall my strengths fall into the executing and relationship building domains. Mm-hmm. And so I attribute a lot of that. I was an instructional coach for 16 years before coming an assistant principal in the same building. And so as an instructional coach, you do work side by side with teachers and have those relationships and personal relationship, professionals relationships. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's been such a successful transition for me to be an assistant principal in the same building, because my staff already knows my work ethic and my relationships with them. And so that, besides the COVID pandemic, that was already taken care of moving into this role. But one thing I did not place anywhere in influencing domain or in the strategic thinking domain. So those are two areas that I must rely on another admin team member that I might need to work on, because I make I get the work done and I make an idea become a reality, but I might not be as strategic thinking. I might be one way to do things. So that's one area that I need to grow in as well.
Good, great. Kylie.
One of the things that surprised me, well, not really surprised me, but my top one was impact. And generally that is something that I have heard to a lot of the times take out of my everyday process is that I'm too emotional. But that happened to be my top one. And I think that that has made all the difference for me in my last 5 years of teaching, is seeing the relationships that I built with my students, and seeing that makes a difference for them. I could have a student from freshman year, and then when they graduate, I had no idea the amount of impact my relationship had with them, but they did, and they come back and tell me. And so I think that that's an important thing for me to hold on to, even as I move further
Right, and
into.
I'm glad you said that, Kylie, because don't take it out. As you grow in administration and you mature, you learn to manage it.
Mhm.
You will learn to personally manage it. You know that, you know who you are, you know those feelings and emotions you have, so you are in control of that. So you're able to manage and control them, but don't give it away, because that is part of who you are. That's part of your identity. Okay, great. Hope?
Okay, my top discipline, that I know for a fact. I'm very structured, very routine. But unlike when Felicia was saying that she needs to cut back on that, I've been asked by several staff members to host a PD on the discipline I have, because it's not over the top, but I am so disciplined that when students come in, they know that this is what's expected. I can't deviate from it. And at the same time, I thought it was contradictory, but to be so disciplined, but also be a relationship builder. So in the midst of being disciplined with the structure and my routines, I'm still building relationships with the staff and with my students. The one that definitely I'm a learner. I'm a history major. I love history. I love making the connections between what happened and helping people see the connections. So this was really straight. This was dead on for me. I think for me to work on this context, just trying to hone that a little bit more. But I like the discipline, how I realized the connection between discipline and building relationships.
Great, great. Lanika?
So I scored really high in the strategic category. Actually, I think 4 out of 5 of mine were in the green. And then the 5th one was achiever, which speaks a lot to what areas I've worked on in my career for the past 3 years. If I had taken this 5 years ago, I would have had more in the relationship building area, because that's definitely a strength of mine. But I think I've recognized areas that I needed to work on. And this assessment kind of revealed for me confirmation that you've worked on some of these things. So now you're showing qualities of being more strategic in how you handle things. And then I would say the area I knew I wouldn't score anything in was influencing, because I am a person who just accepts people for who they are in a sense. And so I don't necessarily have that influencing demeanor when I am interacting with people. So that's just something, me having a different perspective of what it means to be an influencer is an area that I need to work on.
That's a great perspective. But you said something that that's going to be so important for all of you. You said that 5 years ago, or several years ago, if you would have done it, things would have been differently. I promise you this: you go into administration, and 3 years from now, you can take the same assessment and some things will change. I can almost promise you. And 5 years from now, it would, because you grow, and as you grow, the light bulb comes on in different ways and in different areas. So just continuously look at these types of assessments, so that because you will emerge into different types of leaders over your career. Tamika.
I'm I like what Diane said about well, let me start with the ones I wasn't surprised about. Intellection and input, which I wasn't under strategic thinking, that I am a thinker. I like to strategize and think of different ways of doing things. And also achiever, I had that under executing, which was spot on. The ones that I feel like, and I do agree that I need to make changes with my relationship building. As a teacher, I've been
She's having to be a mama. That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's okay.
So I've always been one of the teacher. I come in the building, get my job done. Of course, I work well with my team, but I wasn't interested in building relationships outside of my team or any of my my area, my department. So I really would have to work on, not saying that I'm not friendly. It's just I think that I was okay. I'm here, not here to make friends. I'm just here for my job. And I know as an administrator that would definitely and certainly have to change. Just to, in order to gain trust and just building that, just building the relationship of a solid foundation with my staff throughout the building. I think that is something that I would definitely have to work on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ashley, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so my strengths were in executing, which I can kind of get that. I am definitely a task-oriented person and I need to get things done in a efficient manner. I appreciate where it discussed needing to be able to have honest feedback in order to be able to move on to my next thing. So I think it was like 4 out of 5 of my strengths were in the executing area. And then I had 1 in relationship building. I would prefer to have had more in relationship building, just like my personal preference, because I do try to work on building relationships. I did kind of wonder, just in the time that I'm in right now in grad school, and knowing that there were some things that I was just personally dealing with, did that kind of have a role to play in some of the responses. And it definitely kind of threw me for a loop, the time constraint in answering the questions, because I got timed out a lot, because I just kind of went back and forth in answering, and just felt like I don't know, just a little bit more indecisive in trying to decide where I landed on the continuum in trying to respond.
And
to some of my questions.
it frustrated you, didn't it, Ashley?
It did. I didn't like it at all. And I didn't like that.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I would prefer to be able to go back and reference what I had already done. So yeah.
Right, that's great. And before I let you go, how was Dad?
Dad is doing good, getting used to his new regimen and schedules. So I mean, I could definitely see, like all that task-oriented stuff, because I created schedules, printed them out, and his nurses were they were like, wow, what in the world? But I wanted to make sure everything was, lined up in order, no conflicts, medication right. So when you go from no medication to, like 8 pills multiple times a day, it'll take you for a loop. So
that's great. He's got a good daughter taking care of him though. And India, I know we've talked. Have you been able to do your assessments yet?
no, not yet.
Okay, that's okay. And how was your dad today when you checked on things?
He's fine. He's just hard-headed.
Hard-headed, okay.
He's fine.
Okay,
he doesn't want to do what he's supposed to do, but he's
that's
fine.
good. That's good. And listen, the activity, this assignment, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. I heard exactly what I wanted to hear. But my point in all of this, and I know it took some time, and after I got into it, I wasn't worried about that. We've run over a little bit. You've got to know yourself. You've got to know yourself as you're moving into an administrative role. You've got to be willing to self-reflect. You've got to be willing to, and you need to find, you know, myself, I want people to, sometimes I will talk with small groups, or I may talk one-on-one, and I'll say, okay, if there's something that, what is something that you would like to see me do differently? I will ask them, you know, is there something that I do that I could do better? I did that with my staff just recently that I'm working with. And, you know, because even though I've been in the business a long time, you know, I still find myself growing in new ways every day. And as long as you stay in the business, I think you will find yourself, when you stop growing, that means you need to go home and you need to stop what you're doing. So, you know, just always find an opportunity to grow. Dr. Revis, would you like to make any comments about their last assignment that they've got to do before we close out tonight?
Well, just very quickly, I hope by now you have met with your Zoom team and you've completed some data analysis that would be appropriate for your particular digital learning competency. And, you know, within the next week, you need to start putting together your presentation. So with that said, do you have any questions about the presentation in this project?
Okay. Let me say on that for that class, whoever the leader is, you will take control of you know, you will share your screen and I will let you have at it, and you will basically take the lead of everything. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to try not to say anything. Dr. Revis is going to try not to say anything because we want to hear what you've got to say, and then we will move on. So whoever the Zoom captain is, you be ready to take charge of the screen, and you know, you take charge of your group and you move on. Okay. We want to see your leadership, and as a Zoom leader, and then as a group, we want everybody to participate. We want to see your leadership in all of this as well. Again, thank you for this evening. I know we've gone over, but we've not had an opportunity. I would have loved this summer to have done much more of these kinds of things with other activities, but you know, in 10 weeks, we can't do but so much. Make sure that you are looking at your schedule, that you've got what I need on Thursday, and continue to work on what Dr. Revis needs. Reach out to us if you need us. We're available. We're available. You know how you don't put work in Blackboard very long that I haven't already responded back to you. So you know that I am in there several times during the day and at nighttime. That's the last thing I do before I go to bed at nighttime. I'll check to see if a student's put one more thing in there. So anyway, any questions before we sign out?
I have one, but I don't want to hold the group up. It's in regards to the assignment, but I mean, I can ask you all that if I don't want to hold the group up.
Okay, well, if anybody wants, they may want to hear it if you're okay with asking, and then if they don't, they can go ahead and sign out if they don't want to. Go ahead, Lanika.
Okay, so when I was reading over the team presentations, the one that I have, the group that I have, we have content and instruction, and the directions talk about addressing the recent teacher working conditions data, North Carolina report card data, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess my question is, in my group, because we've all had different schools. I may not be thinking about this the correct way, but we all have different schools and we all have our own different data. Are we in this presentation talking about what we all discovered in this particular area as it relates to our school, or are we somehow putting it all together? I think that's where I'm confused.
Go ahead, Dr. Revis.
Okay, what your team needs to do is select one set of data from your one school. So it could, if you're the team leader, it could be your school, and you're going to look at your student performance or achievement data and your teacher working condition survey data. And everybody's going to embrace that data and work around that data as if all of you were from that same school.
Okay. And
Okay,
Lanika, if it's your school, then what you're doing as a team, you're teaching, you're learning from each other, and they can go back and replicate that same with their school, you know, later on. It's just you're going through the process.
Okay.
Does
Gotcha.
that answer it?
Yes, that
Okay,
does.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, Michelle, that's what you had asked me the other day, right? Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Dr. Stedman, could you clarify that? Because I felt like these were like recommendations for the SAT. Like this was like a training program that you were sharing with your
Okay.
teacher.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Revis.
You went out just a little bit there on me, Diane. So I hope I'm answering you correctly. You just take one set of data, decide which member of your team, and use that one set of data. And all of you are going to be looking at that and doing an analysis around that, and then developing your presentation with recommendations.
So
Recommendations for the SAT.
You and Maisha
Right.
and Kylie will decide which one of your school's data you're going to use.
Mhm.
And then that you will develop your presentation around that data.
And remember, what's different here and what you've done before is you're grounding this in digital learning competencies. So be sure that you read your competency very well, and that you break it apart and you address all the different pieces of that competency.
And remember, you've got about a 15, 20-minute presentation that you're going to be making as a team. Okay. Other questions?
And during the presentation, guys, you know, one person can start out and do a 3 slides, and then you can switch off to another person. Not one person doesn't have to do the whole presentation.
Right.
You know, in fact, it would be great to see you working together to do that.
Mhm. And the Zoom leader can basically facilitate that so that they can call on people and, you know, keep it flowing that way. I would encourage that. Okay. Well, good night. We will see you next Monday at 6 o'clock with Dr. Lamb, and then Dr. Revis and I will be online Tuesday. If you don't need us, you can continue working on what you need to work on, and then those that do need us will be here for you if you need us. And then the next week, and I'll send you a reminder closer to the time, week 11, we'll come online at 6 o'clock so that we can make sure that we give everybody enough time to be able to do their presentation. Okay. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank y'all so much for a good class.
Have a good evening.
Okay.